Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and this is our 8th episode of Pyjama Talks, and a couple of other things that I should say before we start. So if you will use this code Pyjama20 promo code, you will get 35% off of the everybookonmoney.com. They are our informational partners, and big thanks to them. And also for this episode, for the best commentary or best question or best, best idea, best thoughts, we will give 5 promo codes to the video Rust in Motion by Carol and Jake. So feel free to ask anything or to post any idea or comments below. And today we're going to talk about women in tech, about Rust, and our first guest is Carol. Hello, Carol.
Hi.
So Carol Nichols / Goulding, founder of Integer LLC, 32 LLC, rustlang core team, co-author of the Rust programming language book and Rust in Motion videos. And our second guest is Alёna Yuryeva, software engineer, monocodos, STEAM educator, and Rust language community member. And the first big question, because it's connected to the women in tech. And by the way, we wanted to run this show before the before conference organized by Mining, Women in Tech. But yeah, it happened, so it's after. And Carol, how it was? It was a big conference in Twitch, right?
Yeah. Manning had a Women in Tech online event that I believe anyone can watch on YouTube or Twitch. But yeah, I heard it went well.
What was your way to software world?
When I was growing up, we had an Atari that did BASIC, and I think we had a book of games written in BASIC you could type in from the book. That was fun to type them in and change them and see what happens. I did some programming on a TI-83 graphing calculator. I took some programming classes in high school. Then I decided to major in computer science for college, and then I got a job doing XSL, which is kind of a weird language, but it was web programming in a way, some HTML, JavaScript, CSS. And at that job, I got into Ruby and Ruby on Rails. And after that, I got into Rust, and we can get into why I got into Rust. But
So it was a straight way from the childhood, from programming these things to the Rust.
I always enjoyed computer programming. I find it really fun when it's not working, and then you finally figure it out. That moment is really exciting to me. I like making useful things to help people do what they're trying to do.
And Alena, how it was for you?
I started trying out basic and websites when I was in 4th grade. But at the same time, I wanted to become a teacher, I wanted to become a lawyer, many kinds of things. In 7th grade, when we got internet in our school, I was pretty disappointed when they have blocked the majority of websites. This brought me to learning about how networks work, so that I found a way to circumvent it with the help of my father. And then in 9th grade, I was going to be an investigative journalist. But then there was a guy I dated at that time, and he was like, well, it's good that you're into journalism, because you won't be able to be doing physics and IT because you're a girl. And I snapped. So I signed up for the IT track the next day. And then I graduated. I wasn't sure where I want to go. I liked mathematics. I love mathematics so much. And then somehow I transferred universities after my 2nd year in college. And I sort of accidentally got into software engineering this way. And I ended up liking it. I never regretted my way because it's awesome. There are so many difficult and wonderful and challenging problems. It pays well. It's prestigious. It gives you liberty in how you live your life. It gives you plenty of opportunities.
Preparing this episode, I found one interesting side. The thing is that I was super surprised and kind of shocked because it says that only 3%, just 3% of females say a career in technology is their first choice. And also 27% of female students say they would consider a career in technology compared to 61% of males. Did you have same in your childhood or at university? Is that I don't know, only boys go to the computer classes, or it wasn't like this?
It didn't really bother me all that much that there were a handful of incidents, but I've been really lucky. What you learn in school is so different from what you actually do as a career. Like the stereotype is that, well, we're all alone in our basements now, but isolating. But the stereotype is that you're typing alone in a dark room and you never talk to anyone because you're a super nerd. And that's what people think of when you're asked to think of a programmer. But like, I'm in so many meetings and you have to talk to people and figure out what it is you're supposed to build and how it's supposed to work, and doing support for your product and making sure it's up. And if you go into programming because you want to get away from people, you're going to have a bad time, because it's all about interacting with people and figuring out the best way to write code with other people.
I think for Russian community, and it's slightly different from US or maybe even European, because we kind of less inclusive, I would say. And in my university, there was 400 men and only 5 or 6 females. It was super extreme. I don't know, what do you think?
In the university, I think I was one of the 7 girls out of 60 people in my year on my graduation, but I was only one of maybe 10 of 200 people when I just started college.
Is it some kind of natural historical thing, or we should somehow force to have more females into IT, or starting from universities or from schools?
I do understand the reasons why many technical companies are trying to reach out to women and to people of color as well, even though it's often being said that it's because of diversity or some equality. I don't think that that's the main reason, but the main reason is our field is constantly expanding and we just need new blood in, because otherwise the company won't be able to hire just enough people. The most important thing, the most important milestone is the entrance point. A lot of people a lot of people in general population who are not in IT, they have certain stereotype then that might steer people away from pursuing the field, so that the people outside are less accepting of you choosing this career path than people inside who are waiting for you.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. There are problems at every stage between when you're little in elementary school and the first schools that you go to, all the way through management CEOs of tech companies. There are problems. It's not any one problem, it's all the problems. And there are things that each of us can do to fix this at the point that we're in. And again, I want to echo what Alena said, that it's not just women, it's people of color, it's people of different backgrounds. If we had more Black people in tech, that would have been noticed much sooner in the process, and it could have been fixed. So we need everyone's input, everyone's backgrounds. Disabled people, we need to know how they experience tech, so we build something that everyone can use. So we need more different people to build the best thing.
And I want to somehow turn our direction into the Rust world. Is it the same for Rust community? Why I'm asking, because, for instance, I'm pretty familiar with the front-end community, and front-end itself is really popular these days. It brings more diversity because more people joining, like as you, Alena, said, fresh new blood. C++ communities or backend-ish communities, they always been kind of like more private than JavaScript community. Is it true for Rust? And what do you think?
We are not especially diverse. We do have a fairly large contingent of LGBTQ folks. And one thing that I feel like is really important and helpful is that from the day that Rust was open sourced, Rust had a code of conduct which lays out how we expect people to treat each other when you're interacting in official spaces. And we have a volunteer moderation team that anyone in the Rust community can contact if you have problems with anyone. This is really important because a lot of other communities like C++, like Linux especially, haven't had this, and they have to have the argument about whether they should or not, which itself is often very contentious. Example I always think of is Linus Torvalds is known for his angry tirades that he will go on the mailing list if he thinks your code is bad. He's like, "You're so stupid, why would you ever write this code like this, blah, 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 blah." Very recently, Linux has adopted a code of conduct, and he has said, "I realize I am wrong to treat people this way, and I'm going to step back and try and do better." He has set the tone in the Linux community, and I think they have a whole lot of work to do to make that space more welcoming. I know of a lot of people who were interested in it, but didn't want to put up with that sort of abuse, and no one should have to. And the other thing about Rust that I think is awesome is like it is making it possible for more people to write lower level code without needing to spend years and years memorizing all the ways you can shoot yourself in the foot with C. I don't want to write C. I want to make something useful without having to keep track of all that stuff in order to make good code. The Rust compiler makes that possible for non-superhumans.
Alena, what do you think about Russian-speaking community? Because, well, frankly speaking, it's another part of the cultural difference, but sometimes it's a bit harsh and toxic. Maybe it's connected somehow to the some politics things, but we will not touch them. But for you personally, how do you feel? What is the Rust community?
Indeed, due to some cultural reasons, probably Russian communities are just about anything tend to be harsher. That's because we are way more straightforward when it regards to feedback. So there are basically different rules. And so therefore, say at work where we can like interact freely on the same level. In terms of the surface, yes, the guys in the Rust community in the Russian-speaking segment are sort of more harsh. They won't keep it. They will tell it like it is, and they will probably tell it harsher than it is.
The Linux community and Linus Torvalds himself, they were not that welcoming, but isn't it for a reason? Because, for instance, front-end community or front-end languages or front-end development itself, it's more relaxed and forgiving. I mean, in terms of errors. So if you, mess with JavaScript, maybe some users, they will have some problems, or they will press F5 or command error to reload the page, and that's it. The problem mostly will be gone. This toxic behavior, in terms of it's more strict, it's not welcoming for the beginners or people who do mistakes. Isn't it a natural thing, and it's some related to the language itself and the platforms that it's running? I
think as people, we all have a choice in how we talk to each other. We don't have a compiler. And you have the way you say things has an effect on other people. And maybe that's what you're going for. You want to discourage people to give casual contributions and not get involved. You only want people who will put up with being called stupid until they learn, and those are the only ones you want to let through. But you should be conscious about the choice that you're making. Those are two ways of expressing the same thing, and it doesn't affect the technical end products. But as people, you have a choice on how you discuss things, and you are free to interact however you want. You are free to design your community however you want, the social norms, the cultural norms, but you should be aware of the effects that you'll have and whether people will choose to be in your community or not.
We should definitely be aware about how people hear what you say, about the way they understand it, because first of all, different kinds of stuff is pleasant for different people, and different kinds of stuff is offensive to different people. So with different cultural makeup, there are going to be different rules anyway. I hear it often from US people and from UK people. They tend to be very restrained in showing their feedback. So many people in from Russia or from Russian-speaking countries are just sometimes surprised when they heard basically a praise, and what was meant was actually some critics and the harsh ones.
I think that Rust community, by the nature of the language, it's always would be somehow limited because Rust is, well, it's pretty popular language, but for me it's not the most popular, because it's always would be. It's not JavaScript, it's not in the browser or something like this. But what do you think? It's like moving to the Rust language itself. Will it spread and the community will grow rapidly, and we would have millions of people writing in Rust, or it's always would be somehow limited to some niche?
I kind of hope that we grow steadily but slowly. So we're trying to kind of work in the same places that C and C++ have worked, which are typically slower moving, more stable, very conservative as far as taking risks. So those kinds of places and companies and projects are not going to run to the hot new JavaScript framework. They're going to take their time, and when they choose something, they're going to expect to stay on that for decades. And I do think the lack of jobs in Rust is limiting our community growth in open source as well. I hope that as more companies slowly move to Rust, that more people will join our community as well.
Alena, by the way, I know that you had an experience to somehow sell, sorry for this word, Rust to your company. And
yes, I did.
So what it was?
In sort of a way. Okay, so our company, Manakadas, is currently doing a smart bot for GitHub, and we're basically making some code checkers and integrating the existing code checkers into the GitHub interface, so that we can just give the user good code suggestions on the go during the code review. So imagine we recently have integrated Clippy there, so you can just click and accept everything that it offers, everything that it suggests, right in GitHub in a couple of clicks. I've been telling my boss that we should turn our head to Rust since about the beginning, but initially we were working on things to do with Python and C and JavaScript, and we sort of have put JavaScript on hold in a bit of time because there was just hard to find some tools that would be widely used and not controversial. Even though our code base is not in Rust yet, we think that we're going to have some a couple of modules in Rust and open source, then definitely we would love to tap into the Clippy API and the compiler API and see what we can make there, whether we can make some checks that can be integrated into the same structure. I don't think it will become the most popular language ever, not in the first 5 million, because it's pretty hard to start learning it. But at the same time, it's the most loved one many years in a row already, so it's going to be pretty popular, and its area of application may widen pretty considerably.
Many people, they don't have computer science education these days. They just started doing some, even though they started doing programming maybe when they turned 30 or even 40, not from the childhood. So what do you think? Can Rust be this language, or it's more like a niche language and you should learn something before that, or maybe even computer science, and then you can switch to Rust?
It's not a great first language right now. And in the Rust programming language book, we even say we are assuming that you've written some code in some other language first. And I feel like when you're learning programming to start out with, like I learned when I was doing basic programming, typing in from books, it's really important to be able to see and experience what you're writing and be able to change it and see the difference. And like there's not super great GUI programming, there's not super great web application stuff for Rust yet, but I feel like a Python or Ruby on Rails or JavaScript kind of stuff you can run in the browser is a much smaller feedback loop for someone to really experience what they're creating, and that's really important.
Oh, I think that actually probably Rust might never become a good first language to learn because of a lot of awesome features, a lot of wonderful features that it has. They really just solve the problems that appear somewhere in other languages, and you won't just understand why it's so hard to make friends with the compiler. Even in a plain object-oriented language like C#, we have many concepts that are not so clear for people without any computer science background. And so it really requires not just computer science background, but at the same time what I would call a industry-specific cultural background. Like, the mathematics we know is actually not so complicated. Most of us cannot solve differential equations in our head. They definitely can't. But at the same time, most developers know, for example, error efficiency or some graph-related concept. We might not know the exact computations, but we have just culturally at the back of our mind, and it helps us pick better algorithms. People without the tech background, they just don't have this cultural thing. They don't think in terms of, it looks like this, it looks like that. This was in our history. This was the Linux time. They don't understand where the things came from, so they have a real difficulty solving tasks that we deem pretty easy. But that's not because they don't have it in them, but because we have a tremendous amount of these cultural backgrounds of just things that we know, that we have acquired over our career, over our studies, by watching memes, by watching funny videos, not some rocket science, but they just don't know this knowledge. And if only they knew, they would be just as fast as we are.
Is there any endpoint for Rust? So we are aiming for that's user base, or we want to have this percentage of users using Rust, or it's about problem solving, not some way to rule the world.
I feel like Rust is kind of moving the quality of software forward because it's trying to eliminate all the memory safety problems that happen in C and C++. And it's really interesting because both Microsoft and the Google Chrome team have studied their security vulnerabilities and looked at the root cause, and they both found out that 70% of them have come from memory safety problems. We are aiming to solve those problems and make software crash less, make it more secure, and help as much as we can to stop making those same mistakes over and over again.
Alena, what do you think? What advice you can give to others to join software or IT or Rust community?
Okay, so to everyone who is considering joining the IT community, Rust community is wonderful, but it applies to the whole IT as a whole. Just don't be scared. There are a lot of things that you don't understand at first. They're not that complex. You will just adopt them in time. Just because of the fact that you are there, that you are in community. Don't be afraid to ask people around, because actually everyone around is pretty helpful. Most people would just jump into the opportunity even if they don't care about the personal passion, but they care just about making the average software quality better.
Maybe advice from you, Carol?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. A career in computer programming means you're always learning. You will never know everything there is to know because there's too much to know. Getting to learn new things is part of what I like about it. So if you like to learn new things, then programming might be a great job for you.
Thank you for joining me today, and it was a really interesting talk. And for you viewers, use our Pyjama code to view the video about the Rust. It's super interesting, and see you next time.